This is the Nubia Red Magic 3. It has a 90Hz AMOLED 6.5-inch display, 12GB of RAM, a 5000 mAh battery, 48-megapixel camera, 256GB of storage, the Snapdragon 855 processor, liquid cooling, and a truly epic gamer design. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91Tech, and this is the Nubia Red Magic 3, a phone that could cost you as low as $479. And so today we're going to review it and talk about whether or not it's worth buying. Now, full disclosure, this phone was sent to me by Nubia themselves, but the video is not sponsored. This is my honest opinion about everything. Sadly, I will not be getting paid to review this phone, but hey, a video is a video. I am going to put a link in the description to Nubia's site if you're interested. Not getting any kickbacks whatsoever, but if you want to pick one up or you just want to look at it on their site, that will be in the description. Also, a bit of a surprise to me, was not expecting it. The Nubia Red Magic 3S just came out. Wasn't expecting that. They're very, very similar phones, and who knows, you might even be able to find this one for cheaper on the used market or something. Regardless, I think it's worth reviewing, especially because of the crazy specs for such a low price. This phone seems too good to be true, and in a sense it is. That $479 price tag is for the lowest model, which isn't actually much worse. It has 8GB of RAM instead of 12, and only 128GB of internal storage. The model I have here, the camouflage model, will run you $599, which isn't bad and is honestly pretty fair for the spec increase. The OnePlus 7T will cost you $600, and the 7 Pro will cost you $669. The thing is that the specs are basically equal, a little bit better on the OnePlus side, but not by much, and for like quite a bit more money. I mean, honestly, if you are really wanting to save some money but want a very powerful Android phone, this is probably the best deal I've seen. Now, while the price is cheaper than the OnePlus, the quality will not be the same, but we'll get there. And the display is an interesting point. It is OLED, of course, which is great. Blacks are black and colors are vibrant. The overall quality is pretty fine, although a little bit off. By default, everything on the screen looks a little too big, so I made it smaller in settings, but that's not a big deal. This display just isn't quite as crisp as I would like it to be. It is 1080p, which is a little low compared to most smartphones nowadays, but you will have a mostly tough time noticing any problems with it. And I mean, yeah, most people definitely wouldn't notice that the quality is definitely lower than a better phone. The Red Magic 3 and 3S are marketed as gaming phones, and at their core, that's what it is. But at the same time, it's also a very high-spec phone for a very fair price. I've never been a huge fan of gaming phones, just in general. I think that sometimes they're a bit overpriced and that, well, mobile gaming just isn't that good in the first place, but this phone does it pretty well, considering how much money you pay and what you get, as well as, you know, the features. I guess the ROG phone isn't actually too bad of a deal either, but it's definitely not at the same level of value as this phone, costing you about $850. For anyone who just wants a good Android phone, this might be a half-decent option. Emphasis on might be. There are still problems. The software is a bit buggy and weird, being Nubia's OneSkin, although you could help this by downloading a launcher. We do have Android 9, which isn't too bad, considering most phones shipping right now still have Android 9, and actually a lot of phones from overseas are worse than that anyways. I'll talk a bit more about software in a moment here, but first let's go over the design. The phone is massive. Here it is beside my iPhone 11 Pro Max. It's decently heavy, but what you're really going to notice is how ridiculously tall it is. This might seem impractical, but again, gaming phone, so when you hold it horizontally, that extra screen space is going to be a good thing, at least in theory. The back of the phone is interesting looking. It's definitely a gaming phone and carries an aesthetic personally I'm not a big fan of. The subtle camo print on it is pretty awesome, and I love that, but all the lines and angular design in general just seems like a bit much. I could live with how angular it is if it got rid of the printed arrows and lines, but this is the one they sent me, and if you get one of the lower models, they have more plain colors, so you don't have all the lines. Although I would have just really liked the camo with just the camo, no lines, whatever. When it comes to table wobble, this phone is the king. If you want to use this phone flat on a table, you might have a rough time. The fingerprint sensor is kind of small, and I guess that's okay. It does the job, but it isn't great. It's not the fastest in the world. It does work, but my biggest problem with it is that it gets a lot of accidental touches. So if you just like your finger just lightly brushes by it, it'll try to read your fingerprint, and then it of course will fail, and it'll let you know by vibrating. And I'll get to vibrations in a moment, but let's just say they're quite unpleasant. And whatever, you could just use the basic Android Face Unlock if you want, even if it isn't terribly secure, and I wouldn't consider the fingerprint sensor to be a deal breaker. Under that reader, you have a gray strip that lights up with RGB when you flip the phone into Epic Gamer mode, which I'll show in a bit. I gotta say, the lighting is actually pretty cool, and I wish it was always on, even if there was a bit of a battery drain. There are a few neat things you can do with it, like have it turn on while charging or when you're getting a call, so you can always mess with that. Also, the logo below the strip is actually backlit and can be turned on too. And this phone is pretty dang good from what I've seen with battery life, which it should be, considering it somehow has 5,000 milliamp hours. But back to vibrations. This is the worst phone I've ever used when it comes to vibrations or haptics or whatever you want to call it. It's really bad, and I'm guessing it's just because of how the cooling system is designed inside. When it vibrates, it kind of like echoes through the whole phone. I don't really know how to describe it. It's not good. It actually makes the phone kind of unpleasant feeling to use, and I've definitely found myself turning it off for like keyboard haptics and stuff like that. It's really, really bad. I guess you gotta cut corners somewhere. I just wish it wasn't there. Speaking of cut corners, the speakers are straight garbage. Considering this is supposed to be a gaming phone, I would expect the speakers to actually be okay, but they're not. It's not like the speakers are horrible. They are front facing and stereo, so you should in theory get good sound, but you just kind of don't, at least in comparison to better flagships. They do get quite loud, but they just don't sound quite as good as I wish they did. And on a gaming phone, you'd think you'd have better speakers, so definitely not a deal breaker by any means, but still not great. And of course, we have the headphone jack, which is pretty awesome. In a world where everyone is trying to get rid of the headphone jack to make room for other stuff, Nubia not only keeps the headphone jack, but also sticks a literal fan inside of their phone. The camera on this phone is not terrible, mostly, but definitely not as good as the specs might imply. The back camera has a massive 48 megapixels and up to, get this, 8K video. This is apparently in beta, but still, that's absolutely nuts. Here's some apparently 8K video from it. I'll let you judge it for yourself. Even if it doesn't look amazing, it is pretty darn impressive from a technical standpoint. Photos are fine, I guess. Again, 48 megapixels, but like a lot of Chinese phones that throw in massive megapixel counts, the photos are good, but not exactly mind-blowing. Regardless, you can take some decent photos with this phone, and the detail is pretty good. If you're buying a gaming phone, the camera probably isn't the biggest concern anyways, and this one, it'll do the job. The front-facing camera has 16 megapixels and has beauty mode on by default. Or actually, it calls it pretty, and you can change the level. This is a picture of me at prettiness level 10. This is horrifying. I look like I was made of plastic and my face got partly melted off. Going to a at least normal photo, you can see here, my biggest problem here is that there was no way to try to get the background in focus, so it just completely blew it out. No HDR whatsoever. That's pretty darn bad. The selfie, in terms of detail, isn't horrible, but the background should not look like that, so mostly disappointed from the selfie camera. When it comes to hardware, this phone is stacked. Yeah, it's got crappy speakers and haptics, but honestly, I mean, you probably don't care that much. The 90Hz display is gorgeous, even if the pixel count is a little bit low in comparison to some other phones. But to truly take advantage of the great hardware, you need to turn on Epic Gamer mode. So to do that, you just flip that switch, and there we are, and it's upside down, but okay, well, you get the point. There's Epic Gamer mode. Now this is where we start talking about the software, at least kind of. The phone essentially has two modes, regular Android and the Red Magic mode, not exactly sure what it's called. To get to it, all you need to do is flip that red switch, and when you do, the animation will play followed by a list of all your games. If you tap on your desired game and play it, the phone will take advantage of the hardware, and it should be able to play in 90 Hz. And holy cow, this is without a doubt the best mobile Minecraft experience I've ever had. To be fair, I probably haven't played Minecraft Pocket Edition in like 4 years, but point stands. That 90 Hz is super nice on a phone, and while it might not be as nice as the 120 Hz on the new ROG phone, don't forget this phone is quite a bit cheaper. When you go into gamer mode, the lighting strip on the back will turn on, and you can actually hear the fan fire up. It's pretty cool, and I'll kind of show you what I mean here. So this is no Epic Gamer mode, and this is with Epic Gamer mode. We have a couple bumpers on the top of the phone, which are really nice for some mobile games like shooters, so that's a solid addition. And we also have a 7-pin connector on the side that I believe is for accessories. But of course, there's the problem with most smartphones imported from overseas, the software. A lot of the time you'll get a good phone for the price, but the software it comes with is bloated and kind of broken. And I'm happy to say that's mostly not the experience here. It is only running Android 9, as most newer Android phones are at the moment, but I am happy to say that there's very little bloat. There are some annoying minor issues, like since the corners at the top are curved, the time and battery icons look like they're positioned too far to the side. Also in some games such as Minecraft, words will be cut off because they don't know how to handle the curved corners or don't know about it. It's just poor implementation. This is really common across cheaper Android phones, but overall the experience here is pretty darn fine. It's kind of bare bones, definitely not stock, but not too far off. The gaming mode is definitely the biggest software addition, and beyond that, it isn't too much different from your typical OnePlus or Pixel or something with close to stock Android. And that's something I really like. And this begs the question, why aren't phones like these more popular? If you're watching this video, there's a good chance you probably haven't even heard of this phone. And why is this the case? Well, I think there's a few reasons. First, these phones come from overseas. If you're from the Western world, you probably have never heard of Nubia because they don't have much of a presence here. The only way to get these kinds of phones are online and get them shipped to you, and well, how are you even going to find the website in the first place? From a YouTuber, probably. And so that's part of the problem, I think. The second reason is, in my opinion, a lack of refinement. When you get a phone from one of the main companies like Apple or Google or Samsung, you know that you're getting a smooth, consistent, reliable experience out of the box. There are no surprises. Now, this isn't always the case, and bugs and mistakes happen, but generally you know what to expect with those companies. Phones from particularly China are always more questionable because you don't know what to expect. Huawei is probably the most known from there, and that's mainly because of how much money they dumped into marketing recently. OnePlus is also a Chinese company, but they do have more of a presence in America, so they're much more known as well. The Nubia Red Magic 3, and by extension the 3S, is a really good phone value-wise. 90Hz screen, top-end specs, good enough camera, it is absolutely worth buying. The phone definitely isn't for everyone. If you're someone who wants a phone to work straight out of the box and not do too much, this isn't a phone you should buy. But if you are someone who likes to do a lot with your phone and wants a top-end specs and pretty crazy power, it's not a bad choice. And if you're a mobile gamer, then, well, it's probably worth it as well. Is this phone a OnePlus killer? Not necessarily, but it is better value than a OnePlus. And while personally I would pay a little more money and get the OnePlus just for that better level of quality, this phone doesn't come too far off, and if you're on a budget, it's kind of a no-brainer, kind of, if you're okay with this type of phone. It's got so much pure raw power, it really is impressive, especially because it starts at $479. But with that, I'm pretty much done here. Should you buy the Red Magic? Honestly, it's really good and hard to beat value-wise. It's not going to be for everyone, but I think if you are looking for a good deal and are okay with probably some needed workarounds and general things like that, this is a solid Android phone and not a bad pickup. Again, not sponsored, but if you are curious, a link will be in the description below. If you found this video interesting or helpful, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you want to for some reason. And with that all being said, I'm Josh from 91tech. How are mosquitoes in my room in the middle of October? That's whatever. I'm Josh from 91tech, and I will see you all next time.